is simply curtailing freedom of association. And I liked it when you talked about, no, it was, I think it was you who talked about other business associations, because these are civic associations. There are also other forms of associations like business associations. Companies are not required to go through all these red tape bureaucracies. Then what about civic rights and civic associations? Me, I really, and if we really still, in fact, CCG should actually consider a constitutional petition on that. A constitutional petition on whether freedom, whether NGOs that are organized under freedom of association are supposed to pay all these permits for them to enjoy their associative rights. Because they say fundamental rights and freedoms are not granted by anybody, not even the state. For me, I think that should be the overall framework to approach this thing. Thank you.
My name is Benson, and I was also privileged to be part of a focus group. Me, I'm more interested in recommendations. The findings, to me, I agree that is what exists. And for me, one is on definitions. You left it open. You told us we are defined by what you are not, and yet I did not see a proposal there. So for that matter, we can borrow from other countries like Kenya, calls them public benefits organizations. They are no longer called NGOs. I've seen also countries like Malawi shifting and calling them social enterprise organizations. So these are the ones that use a business model too. So I think we need to have a concrete recommendation on that. So we can pick up from Kenya, because we are public benefits organizations, we are not non-government. If you came to TESO and I said you're a non-TESO, I think it will disturb you more. You're a non-TESO, therefore don't talk. It's already sets you off. So, but if I describe you by who you are, it is much more inclusive. So the second thing to me is, you are not very clear on recommendations again. You showed us the challenges. It seems the parliament did not do a good work with the rationalization. They left it, they just removed something, call it a bureau. Then now you have a commissioner reporting, asking Cow to report to him. And I don't know if you looked at the structures of government, what happens. So to me, I would therefore, in my request, say that we should bluntly come out and say what Parliament did wasn't good. And one of the reasons Uganda was lifted out, all the NGOs were removed from the FATF list, was that we had a very strong regulator. And that is the bureau, which are the same autonomous. But immediately we attained the status and Uganda is removed from the gray list, we have undone. So to me, I would therefore again recommend that we upgrade the bureau to an autonomous authority with the powers like that of High Court, and that's what Kenya has done. You remember during the Gen Zs when some people were accusing NGOs of trying to fuel that authority was able to summon and say, if you have evidence, come. And it was able not only to defend the sector, but also regulate it. Now in Uganda, you're only seeing now a department that is only interested in regulating and controlling, but not defending the sector. So I think if we made it an authority, and interestingly, Kenya adopted it, Tanzania 3 months ago, adopted theirs as an authority, Malawi, after studying, taking a Ugandan case. So I think as CSOs, we should be open and say, can you put back? Then these other things will be not there. The third thing is, you again showed us about the redundant structures. Can we again come out and say, get rid of this? The sub-county monitoring, even for me, the district NGO monitoring committee is an additional, if I go by what my colleague said. Why do we have it? Just have an officer there. You have a cow with administrative authority who understands. I think to me it would be easier than creating another bureaucracy at the district level. So for me, we should be open to say we have tested this in the policy and the law. For almost how many years now, it's not working. Districts still are struggling with the bureaus, district NGO monetary committees. The sub-counties are not even there. Now, why do we maintain something which does not? So, again, on the area of penalties, the principle of equity. Why should somebody in NGO world for not reporting be penalized 2 million? And then the biggest thief, who probably has swindled billions, he pays 10 million and then either is in prison or both. I've seen it in the law. So I think, to me, again, there is a lot of discrepancy there. We need to harmonize that. I think, to me, those are the ideas I was thinking of which need to come out clearly.
Thank you very much. Let me go this way, then we pass the mic over there. So there is, can I just see who else? You? Okay.
Well, thank you, Peter, for your presentation. My question, I just want to see some clarification. Arising from last year's conference that we had, there was a general concern of the governing body. Like, for instance, we know at the national level, we have the Uganda National NGO Forum, and then we also have the NIVA. So the statement that we got from Stephen was that as a government, at times they are lost of words, of which of the two bodies, which one can they refer to as a representative of the NGO sector. So I think as maybe the processes are ongoing, some deliberate attempts should really be made to ensure that at least it's either the NIVA or Uganda National NGO Forum, so that it's really clear. Because we really realize that, for instance, we have like organizations belonging to the NIVA, while the same organization also belonging to Uganda National NGO Forum. So the clarity of the structure, the governing body. Thank you.
Thank you. I must thank Peter for the job well done. And the findings that you raised is typical on the ground. And we must congratulate you and the team for this job well done. There are issues that you raised, especially in your recommendation, and the issue of the MOU. Members, I think this one is more problematic for all of us. As we now talk, there is a circular going round instructing the districts not to sign an MOU with an organization until the Solicitor General has approved it. And if this is done, members, I think getting an MOU at this level is likely to be very, very difficult, and it's going to be very, very long. And I think this is something you need to put in your recommendation. It looks like possibly even government is not trusting their own people on the ground who are acting on their behalf. Two, I had my colleague say, I think some of the things of regulating NGOs should be waived off. Members, we must agree that there are some of us who are NGOs who are putting on an NGO uniform, but deep inside him is doing the opposite. In the district where I come from, we got about 4 NGOs coming to support children, and the parents have to make a contribution of not less than 100,000 to be enrolled, and at the end of it, the person disappears. I think regulating NGOs is very, very important, and it's a good thing for government to continue. But possibly what we need to think about and recommend is what the technical team has put up. There should be one-stop center for NGOs reporting, other than having a multiple of them. If I have to register with the NGO Bureau, why should I go again to the URSB? Why should I go to this one of technology, whatever it is? I think it becomes a bit problematic for us. There's something I want to correct, and I think it is a misconception from the district and the sub-counties. Registration of an NGO is done by the Bureau. But you find out that some districts need to register because they want money. Sub-counties are even worse. Sub-counties are not supposed to register even the CBO as per the other old law. The registration of a CBO is done by the district, but the registration of the NGO is done by the Bureau. But I think our districts have not mastered what they are supposed to do. And the reason is exactly what Peter has raised. Where are the guidelines to help these committees to work? And where should they begin and where should they stop? And I think this has been lacking, that we need to raise and make sure that it is taken up to help NGOs and CBOs on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Nyanga James Peter. I would like to start by appreciating Peter for raising these important things, because I have been in a district NGO monitoring committee, but I have seen a confusion. And I think rightly what is pointed out here regarding the district monitoring committee and a sub-county, I agree with you, Peter. This should be scrapped. The other observation Peter have looked at from your presentation, in the Act now we are allowed to do business, that's a social enterprise, but also under URSB, we are registered as not a profit-making organization. I want us to strike, how should the NGOs be registered now under URSB when we are being given to do what? Social enterprises. A recommendation must be there. How should we be registered? Is it as business entities or as not a business entity? Because Act has allowed us to do business. I want that to come out clearly. Second thing comes to registration. Now we have been registered in 2 places, from URSB and also at NGO. I make a recommendation. Why don't the NGOs be registered only in one place? Probably let us be registered under NGO Bureau, other than being registered from URSB. Those are things I see where we have more complications. Because these 2 arms, this confusion of business and this confusion of non-profit making organization, we needed to come up clearly with a recommendation. Probably amendment should be done also in URSB. If not, if the amendments cannot be done in URSB, then it should be done in NGO Act for us to be brought back for all the registration done in NGO Bureau. That is what has been bothering me when you're discussing this issue. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peter, for all that you have shared with us. Indeed, they are concerning all of us as NGO fraternity. My concern is that we are seeing as this rationalization was to cut the costs. But as the NGO, I am like smelling a rat that this nationalization can at one time be used to affect the NGO world, especially in Uganda. If we are not wise enough, they are going to come with an issue of joining NGOs. For example, of joining NGOs, find that if NGO is doing the same activities with the NGO, another one, they are resembling, they have the same feathers. Why can't they scrap off the other one so that they don't, since they don't become more NGOs in the country? Since they are looking at NGOs as a threat to government, that is why there has been the introduction of FIA. You might believe with me, FIA was introduced to limit, to know how the NGOs operate in terms of money rendering, so that they can know this money, has it come to affect the country, to disturb the stability of our country, or that. Even you look at data protection, also all those regulations, URSB, all those are coming to, as a saying, to limit the activities and programs of the NGOs so that they don't increase, because some NGOs, I accept, some NGOs may find doing it differently, can be pretending to be helping, but they're trying to divert people from the government and end up bringing problem. But other NGOs, they need to look into that as early as possible so that we can get a solution, since as we are tabling this thing, so that we can also table it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. I'm Santos Osekane. Once again, I want to thank you for the effort you've used, that you've come onto this. Me, I want to go direct to the issue of MOUs. I think this business of signing MOUs within every district, I concur with it, it would stay. Because one, we have got a number of NGOs coming from different areas, from different districts, coming to operate in another district illegally. But on their side, they are on business basis, on swindling money from the people. Like, for example, one time in 2021, we managed to get one of the NGO who came in saying that the president has sent them. They already registered. When we checked on the papers, they had NASA road papers, stamped very well with all signatures from the bureau. But when we tried to follow it up, we discovered they were not registered. So when we told them first sign an MOU with the district, they took off. So I looked at it and said no, it would be able to stay. Two, the monitoring team at the district, I think we would give a green light onto it, because I come from a district where a lot of things come up. Everyone comes with an idea and says the order from above, and all that comes with the different ideologies and thinking that they are doing the right thing, and yet they're busy swindling money from people. You can find, like last month, we even had a team that came in saying that they're from, that they're sent from Kampala. They're an NGO from Kampala. They have documents, papers, everything clear. and the RDC himself signs and stamps onto it. Getting down on the ground, they come registering students that are going to educate them up to universities, and each household, okay, each child they bring to register in every family pays 10,000 shillings. Now the 10,000 shillings multiplied by over 400 households or 400 students, that's a lot of money. After that, when we followed them up, they took off and they've gone with the money. So if there was a monitoring team that would be looking at that, I think we would have regulated this. So I rest the case.
Thank you. Thank you very much, the research team. I think one of the things that we're not discussing is the spirit within which some of these laws are made. I think for us, we are focusing on the idea that we already exist, so how do we go through what exists? But I think the spirit of the law, a lot of the times, is very targeted to organizations that are holding government accountable. So if you go to organizations that are running health centers, they don't have these problems. It is you guys who are holding government accountable, asking hard questions on corruption. That's where the regulation becomes very critical on you. Now, the number of documents and things that you need to fulfill as an NGO are very many, because then it becomes easy to hold you on one of them if you fail. It creates a perfect excuse for them to hold you on one of them. Because most of the times you're going to forget. You're going to be busy, you will forget to renew. You're going to be busy, you'll forget to do a lot of these things. So I'm thinking one of the things we need to focus on is, why does the law look the way it looks? Because it shouldn't look like that if the role of some NGOs is actually to buffer government's inefficiencies. If I'm providing free education in my village, I'm actually playing the role government should play. Then why should it become very difficult for me to provide that service? So I think for me the spirit of the law is not necessarily to support the sector, it is just to make it difficult for certain parts of the sector. But also it's a contradiction with the unregulated political interventions that we see. An MP can come and give scholarships, can give a women's group money. We don't ask where the money is coming from. We don't ask why they're giving the money. But when an NGO comes and starts giving bursaries, we start questioning where their money comes from. So I think there's a contradiction on holding NGOs accountable, and then the legislatures who make the law make it open for themselves to intervene, but also abuse the process without any question. So I think if we can focus on the spirit of the law, but also juxtaposition it with unregulated political interventions that we have across the country, where politicians come and offer services, but no one questions the source of their money, especially where we see that the service they're offering could be beyond their income as a member of parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. There was a hand here.
Thank you, Peter. For me, my experience is that I did not hear the mention of banks also regulating, because now you find in most situations, even if when we have presented documents to the bank, I had an experience. Stanbic Bank froze the accounts and they told me, go back to the bureau and bring for us certified copies. It was not really a good experience because the timing was so bad. The donors wanted the reports, they wanted their feedback from us, but we could not even acknowledge the funds which we had received. So I think also the banking institutions should also be put as one of the structures, because more often they're always asking us for, in fact, they're also now becoming another accounting body to whom we're supposed to share our reports and returns to. I don't know whether it was only me who was experiencing that, because my accounts were blocked for around 6 months when we could not access the monies, the grant was received.
Thank you so much. I'm Sam Okiso. For me, I would want to say this. The issue of rationalization had some major focus. And I think NGO was a big animal there. The others came in just to name it. This is arising from two major things. One is the human rights issue. Government sees NGOs as the entities that are trying to uphold, that are trying to educate people on their rights. And there are some elements in government who are interested in using violence to continue extending their power or their rule. So it was one of the things to regulate, actually, to gun down some of the NGOs who will not be able to meet those requirements. And then the other one is transparency and accountability. Most of the NGOs focus on the accountability issues, and no one in government is interested in hearing the thing called accountability. When you are registering a CBO in the district, and they look at your objectives, and accountability and transparency is one of them, you will be tossed. Go and meet this, this is missing, just because somebody fears that you are going to undress him or her. So to me, I would propose that in order to have a better working environment between NGOs and government, the NGOs should be involved in this policy making exercise, such that their perspectives are also considered. We would not be having this kind of row if the NGOs were consulted on how their business should be managed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter. Just an observation. Earlier on you said that the board of directors, the NGO board, had been removed, so it is not existent. Then again you said it has been renamed. I was just wondering, how do you rename what is non-existent? Thank you.
Thank you for this space. I'm Tumirwe Florence. I'm working with Kigezi Women Involvement. All these conversations surround our organization. We are one of the CBOs which was operating at the entire Kabale district when it was still with Rwanda and Ruchiga. So for us, we are forced by the act to register as an NGO. That is not enough. Even we are among the NGOs that have fulfilled the requirement to get a renewed permit. I have with me a slip which was given to me to pick the permit by 27th of September, but up to now, those permits are not yet ready because of rationalization. Also, you talked about the CBOs not owning property. This also, we went through it. In 2021, in 2011, we won a motorcycle in Tumaini Award. We took 4 weeks without accessing it because they said we are not incorporated. We had to first engage a lawyer to explain that CBOs do not incorporate. Before that, I should have thanked Center for Constitutional Governance and GIZ for this space. I think it was long overdue. Thank you for looking at this. Because if we don't meet as a big team and we discuss, each entity suffers alone, and people don't know what you are going through, and then maybe sometimes they think that you failed because you did not have the information. We are members of the coalition, national coalition. They brought chapter 4. They took us through all this. So in terms of compliance, we know what to do. But they are now failing. My question is, now that we don't have that permit for this big spell, now who is to pay the penalty? For us, we have fulfilled the requirements. Then We also had another engagement last year. It was in Fort Portal. It was organized by Cancer with support from GIZ. We had the ED for the Bureau for 3 days. We had already advocated for automation and having one center. So our government, instead of moving forward, we are now taking steps backward. Because we had reached at that level, now we are going to discuss again. Now, if it is now the Bureau which will be sitting on a quarterly basis, now, making it a one-stop center and being automated, I think we will take now another center stage. We shall go back to advocate once again. So my view is that when we are having these engagements, we always document and share widely, because some of the things, when they are done by one entity, and not all the regions are involved, some of the things we repeat. I want to share that we had an engagement with women EDs organized by NAU. Some entities that are engaged in good governance were given a permit for 1 year because we are coming to elections. When we had the budget conference at Ruchiga, our RDC said, I want to convene all the NGOs operating in Ruchiga, and we look at those, the MOUs we signed with you. And if you did not have that component of election monitoring and civic education, then we shall scrap you off. So they are using their powers to threaten us, to shut us down, so that we don't operate as we are supposed to hold them accountable. I submit.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you very much, Peter, for that elaborate, detailed presentation on the challenges that NGO sector is facing. So I'm going to give a few highlights on my end. And the first one that I wanted to start with, looking at the structure. So the structure now, as like you had elaborated earlier, you had said that it's the NGO Bureau, the secretary, the staff. Now, we had questions. There were people who were asking questions. Now, what does the secretary do? Who is the secretary, you know? So for me, I find that a very big lacuna in the law that still needs to be addressed in terms of what does the secretary do? What is the secretary's responsibilities? Is it just attending meetings and stopping there? Because we realize that the secretary who was initially the ED is no longer the one issuing out the permits, the certificates. It's now the NGO Bureau. So there must be an address to that. In terms of rationalization, I would say from a lawyer's perspective, the Parliament rationalization measures could have been more balanced to avoid the current operational bottlenecks, because for instance, the drastic changes from the staff. Initially there were 45, now they're 16. I feel like that is a very gradual cut, and it would really affect the backlog, because now imagine very many applications are going to come in, and there are very few people to handle such applications. It would basically mean that people are going to be left there. There are going to be delays in responding to such issues. So looking at also that, there must be at least an increase in the human resource personnel. Coming to the district level, the registration at district level, in my own opinion, the current multi-layered registration process is proving counterproductive. When an NGO already navigates all the 5 entities like you had described, URSB, URA, and many others, I find that when an NGO already has gone through those entities, often with compliance across all those 5 entities, the additional district level is really unnecessary in this case. And government could have streamlined the process by eliminating the district level requirement, thereby reducing administrative burdens and also costs. Then the other thing I wanted to also talk about is the penalties. For the penalties, the fact that someone who has already a permit, but just because they were not able to renew it, and they are made to pay 2 million, while the one who doesn't have a permit and they are they're only supposed to pay 1.6. I find that very unfair on my end. So these are things we have to lobby we have to lobby for legislative reforms through engaging with policymakers and the parliamentary committee to push for revision of the penalty structures. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So there is something moving within my head here, and perhaps Pira, or is it Peter Pira? Pira, and the experts in the room can guide. So these regulators that we comply to, why are they established? Why are they complying to, why are we complying to these guys? So within a country, we have two kinds of persons. We have a natural person, which is me, and an artificial person. The natural person, me, registers with National Identification Registration Authority, FENIN. Now the artificial persons register with URSB. I think that is why we register with URSB. And under there, they register as either a company limited by guarantee or by shares. So when we're advocating for these things, I was thinking of what is possible and what is not. We might advocate for streamlining, and we are registering with one when it is actually hard, when it is kind of impossible. It will always come to you for their taxes. NSSF will always come to you for those remittances, for employees. So I think these other things now, the personal data protection, the FIA, now those ones can follow under NGO Bureau. And when it comes to submitting returns, we submit at least to one entity. But when you are registering, it could be hard for you to register to one organization because you are in different capacities. You are a company limited by guarantee, then they put up this NGO something that needs you to register there. So within the legal frameworks, it could be hard, and government might find it hard again to amend those laws. Then I was also thinking about what my senior brother there recommended, that about the freedom of association and why we should be regulated for associating. These rights under Chapter 4 of the Constitution, you enjoy them in accordance with the law. You see, there are 4 rights that are non-derogable. Great. So I was saying there are 4 rights under Article 44 that are non-derogable. But currently, they are also under attack. So what about these others? They will regulate you, they will regulate those rights because you enjoy them in accordance with the law. Even those ones that are non-derogable, the writs of habeas corpus are thrown in trash cans when you are even seeing people have been tortured. So I think that is something we even courts will tell you, even if you do a constitutional petition, that you have to be regulated. Then I want to add my voice to Mr. Tim that about what Mr. Ekwe asked. Why do we have all these structures, the district NGO monitoring, what, and what? I think they just want you to fail at least on one, because you fail to comply on all. And when you fail on one and you're still okay, they will keep quiet. They wait until they need you, then they bring it out that you failed to comply here, and now we are coming for you. So I think it goes back to what he said, the spirit under which these laws are passed. They are passed not for your own convenience, but for theirs. So it is hard, and we can make as many recommendations as possible, but I think they are really things that are really hard to realize. What I want to emphasize that we can speak about is these requirements that are required for us to renew. Like, why do I need an MOU? And again, a recommendation from the same committee. Recently, we wanted an MOU with a BIM district. We drafted the memorandum in accordance with the law. We shared. The district NGO monitoring committee was okay. So the cow was like, according to the law, we have to submit the Solicitor General. So they submitted to the Solicitor General of Moroto. Then the Solicitor General wrote back that I'm advising that you don't engage this organization with an MOU, but by way of letter. Then I was like, by way of letter? What is that? The law requires me to get an MOU with you guys. Then the Solicitor General is telling by way of letter, what is that? So there are those challenges. Perhaps we need to streamline and keep on advocating. And the other last thing that I can speak about that my current previous speakers talked about is the challenge we have between the state powers and the legal powers. The RDCs and the DSOs, they who are them to convene NGOs? Who are them to order that NGOs should come here? And we don't have anything we can do about them. They come. Think we can keep on speaking about is the requirements that are needed from us when we are renewing, because these are the documents, like how Mr. Kwe recommended. These are the documents they have. They have their the permit, they have it, the what, but they still need them. They still need me to income. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Just a simple question. Peter, for analysis, I saw that you did not make mention of the regulations. Should we assume that regulations are okay, that what is provided for in those regulations is consistent or with what you have submitted, or just that, clarification?
Yeah, thank you very much. Just two issues. One is the Solicitor General question at the district. Do they have representatives in every district? And if they don't, then what happens to NGOs? And maybe what has been happening. Then the issue of dual registration. The Bureau has started the practice, before even rationalization, of issuing a certificate of registration to already incorporated entities. Are they looking for, first of all, is this provided for in the Act? And if not, the registration certificate issued by the Bureau to already incorporated organizations, is it provided for in the Act? And if not, what are the implications? Tomorrow, if they choose, for example, to deregister CCG, the kind of blackmail that they will put on the sector to even make it impossible for you to operate as a duly registered entity under URSB. And how do we deal with that? How can they become a registration bureau when the Act doesn't say so? Is that a provision we need to challenge? Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. I'll also add my voice, and I'll restrict myself to basically three things. But maybe before I say that, I would just like to make a broad observation and maybe encourage us, and particularly say from our role as CCG and the space we sit in. I think it is important that first of all, we familiarize ourselves with these regulations, even before we think of challenging them. Because it's a point of power to first of all know. If you look at, say, some of the challenges at the district level, if you have your facts with you, then you should be able to stand your ground. Because then if somebody is asking of what is not there, then it becomes a problem. And legal interpretations sometimes are a bit of a challenge, but at the district level, there are 2 points of call that you can go to without going to, private lawyers who probably would be expensive. I think at the regional, I think they sit at regional levels. There's the office of the representative of the Attorney General and Solicitor General. I think they sit at regionals, because I know for the north there's one in Gulu, I think there's one in Masindi, there must be one in Arua. Those offices are open, and you can go there and consult. So it is important that you should first know. Even, by the way, magistrates, under the Magistrates Act, are asked for to be able to help the public with interpretations. And these are normal persons. Sometimes you don't need to wait for them in office. Sometimes you can solicit information from the corridors as you meet them. But the key point is that you need to be in a point of no. Then, Peter, I must admit that I haven't read the document thoroughly. From the foregoing discussion, I do not know whether it is out of the scope completely, but as you went on and on, I was just asking myself, what could be a better strategy? What about if we tried to cost this footprint? Because I think it would make a better argument. Because, and costing it in terms of, you'd look at it in terms of maybe cost-effective model, that you're not only looking at the cost of the permit, but say, in average, you might need to make 10 visits, and at a cost of maybe 50,000 per visit or 100,000 per visit. Airtime, it is possible to come up with an average cost. And you say the average cost of getting, meeting all these regulations in the normative, in a normal situation where maybe there are no rejections, could probably come up to a bill of about 5 million now, or 3 million. So you ask yourself, and borrowing from what Mr. Okidi was saying, if you're looking at this from within the framework of freedoms and associations, why should we bear this bill? Because you see, we are talking of engaging, but we also need to develop the strategy to engage. Because this idea of, picking a line and shooting at it, and picking a line and shooting at it, does not make a case. So we need to make a case. So for me, the other thing I would want to see in the recommendations going forward is also the idea around engagement. We have identified the issues. We know them. But there is also the other party, because there is government, but there is also the bureaucracy. There is the agencies that act on behalf of government. I think they also need to know, and especially like when we do the costing, because if if a cow or the district establishment is made to know that there is actually a duopoly in this registration, I think it can work as a disincentive for the cow to continually get interested in a matter, because some of them are very highly educated people and they know these things, and some of them are actually, they have done company laws, they have done. So why would I sit there as a cow trying to continue to ask for these certificates and all this when I know that actually when push comes to shove and somebody is wielding a national a certificate from the bureau, my ask becomes dysfunctional. I don't think somebody is going to invest his time, maybe unless an overzealous RDC or DISO. Then there is also now that other element, the horizontal relationships, and which even starts with what we are discussing with the rationalization. We are looking at the vertical relationship, you know, how the administrative onogram sits. Just an opaque question from a lawyer's perspective. You say somebody is a secretary in an institution. It brings a certain sense of who this person is. So the other question would be, in looking at it in light of the ministry, how many secretaries are there in the ministry? If there's more than one, how do they sit and relate horizontally? Because can there be an instance, if you look at it in the definition of a proper officer, as public service would define it, in the absence of the secretary of the bureau, and he's not secretary of the bureau, he's actually secretary in the ministry, then that means this file can be allocated to any other secretary. Now that secretary, is he familiar with the works of the bureau, the registration processes and all that? So all this is time being accumulated. Then the very, very last thing I want to ask of us as the participants, and maybe because I know the conversation continues, we need to really help Peter with crafting some really actionable recommendations and firm recommendations. Because for any researcher, when you get to this stage, you want to find a joint enterprise with those, with your constituency, your interviewees. So when you throw back and ask Peter, in this particular recommendation, I didn't seem to see this come clear. Yes, you've seen it, so what is that thing that is not clear? So maybe, Peter, you also share your email address, so that, and you don't have to craft this thing in total fashion and style. Just throw your ideas to him with some key actionable words. Because, like, for instance, we are talking of the CSOs, the district, CSOs registering at district and then registering at the sub-county. Make a point and explain that there is really no difference in novelty between a district and a sub-county. It is one joint unit. And the reporting system is spiral. It's one. It goes back to the cow. So why should you report? So languages like that they can understand, so that it makes it easy for him to complete the report. Otherwise, we are throwing the man into a frenzy. We are simply opening it up again, and then defeats the purpose. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Charles. Let me see other hands up. 1, 2, and there's another one. Okay, Chris, just very quickly.
Oh yeah, thank you. I have not read the project, the proposal that was submitted to GIZ. But if there was a possibility of amendment at some point, I would actually propose that what Peter, the outcome of this study, Peter should tailor it into a white paper. A white paper which presents the positions of CSOs on how they should be governed. More especially that government is also rolling out a process of talking about governance. So a white paper could actually be the beginning point of a policy engagement, whether policy and regulatory issues. Also, I have had the benefit to study both law and political sciences. That is why sometimes even when I'm talking about legal issues, my approach is quite different. You will look at a basic structure of the Constitution from what the Constitution will tell you, but me, I will look at the basic structure of Uganda's Constitution from the point of political liberalism. Now, by the fact that Uganda tells you that you have a right to own private property, that is already economic liberalism. When government of Uganda tells you that you have rights to associate, you have rights to perform associations. So if you look at them from that point, that is already political liberalism. So for me, I want us, this process we are doing, we should take it a little bit more serious. That why we should take it more serious is because society continues to grow and laws continue to evolve. I think it was Lord Denning in Parker versus Parker who said that I think there was a council it was an adoption case, I think, who was actually saying that there is no precedence for which this matter was applied before. So, my Lord, we cannot go ahead and do it. Then Lord Denning said that if we are not supposed to do the things we are supposed to do just because there is no precedence for it, then we are going to run at the danger where society is moving forward and the laws are remaining back, and it will be bad for both. So I want us to look at this process that society, civic engagement, he gave us a historiography of civil society and NGOs over time. Now we are at a particular point where we want to assume that Uganda has also politically developed. Economically, Uganda has also developed. And so how does such a white paper and how does such a study in this particular period in time responds to present and future situations? That is why sometimes we may have to be more bold in terms of what we propose. And that is why, for me, I think that, and that is why I come from the point that we need to, first of all, trust citizens. What is a government? A government is citizens. But the problem in Uganda, we seem to, we construct government as if it is for the political elite. It is the regime which is for the political elite, but a government is for the people. And so when we are talking about regulation, even us as citizens, we have a role to play in regulation. And that is where issues such as self-regulation is very pertinent in approaching this thing. For me, I think once we get the philosophy
So, but now these are vague, too broad, like something similar, like you're having a gear like that of the army. What about the drive of gateway, who also has pips and is called a captain? Has he committed an offense? So, and equally when you look at these special obligations, I think you need to look at them and find out that I think for us, that's an area that must be properly defined and they should not be ambiguous. Otherwise, we risk what is happening with other things. Secondly, these are my own questions. Have you found out any provisions in the current law that succinctly and clearly protects the sector? Is there any provision that says, because I've seen it and I've tried to look at other laws, you find there are specific provisions intended to protect and uphold the sector. In ours, because that could be something we use as an engagement. I'm also beginning to notice the creeping securitization of the sector. Is it coming out in your report? Because this would be good. Because when you look at us, I was sharing with Moses what is now going on. You find the DSOs are asking, when are you holding a meeting? In Karamoja, for example, every meeting you hold, you must take the list to the DSO. They are now picking it up. If it does not pick it up, the PISO, the parish internal security officer, where you are holding a meeting, takes that list. So there is creeping securitization. And I think this is something which needs to come out strongly. The other thing I would like to ask you is that in your recommendation, I'm not seeing anything. What happens? How do we, in case the worst comes? Because I'm trying to prepare for the worst scenario. A more worst law might come than the one we have now, with the more deadly provision. So what do we do? How do we maneuver? Are you recommending anything? Because I'm thinking in Ethiopia, when they came up with a bad law, most of them now became businesses. Because if you got man as a business, it is called foreign direct what? Investment. If you got it as an NGO, it is called agumire. When it was banned by the British for agitating for good prices and other things, they became something else. When the unionists became tough and they wanted to push an influence for fair pay, they became UPC. What about us? Are we thinking also that in case the worst comes, or what shall we become? Do we become businesses? Do we become workshop model organizations? Or do we become political parties and say, if that's the case, let's go there? Or do we become pressure groups? So, I mean, you should guide us. We should have a scenario and a thing. So for me, I'm just thinking aloud. And my modification on this proposal, that instead of calling it a white paper, in Uganda, words matter. These guys can jump up and think, white paper, you cabinet. We can call it a policy brief. We can call it prepare as an output of this meeting or this document. You extract a policy brief which can be shared with especially the bureau now, and tell them this is how we think the thing should be. In Parliament and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's 12:45, and I want us to be mindful of time because we also need to give Peter an opportunity to respond to some of the issues that you have raised. But there was a hand somewhere. Let me just have that one. And then, Peter, I think we can give you the floor again.
Thank you very much. Hello. Thank you very much. Just a quick one, Peter. I didn't understand very well about operating beyond the 24th of September without a certificate signed by the Secretary NGO Bureau. And you know, for many reasons that we have been sharing here, this might be hard to achieve. The backlog
etc. Would it mean that an NGO is operating with expiry certificate and so liable to charges? Thank you.
Thank you very much for all of you for making your contributions. I think Peter has been taking note of everything that you've said. And now, Peter, we'll give you the microphone once again to respond to these issues.
Thank you, everyone. I'm happy because no one said, we didn't say this. You have it in the report and we never said it. So, you could come for validation and people send you to do the work once again. So the good thing is many agree with the findings. I'll just respond only to the gray areas, I think which maybe were not understood well. I will not respond to the recommendations because I'll just go and improve on them. I referred to, because someone asked which of the two bodies can be referred to as representative of the NGO. This issue came up, the Apex body issue came up in Arua. I was there in the Arua meeting for NGOs, but it's a very, very dangerous idea. Dangerous in a way that it moves, it tends to move to a situation where government creates an NGO forum of sorts and makes all of us members. And that has been fought, I think, since the time I started engaging with NGOs. That issue of like, let's have one apex body, because people have also asked, we have a right to associate, so why do you say Deniva or NGO forum, one of you shouldn't be there, or UONet or HURNet or whichever, because there are many networks. It's quite a controversial issue, and I don't want to go into that. Of course, there has been an attempt to do it in Tanzania, and Uganda is borrowing the idea from Tanzania. But the Tanzanian one, we all know there is a big difference, especially in democracy and such issues, between Uganda and Tanzania. So the Tanzanian one is like a middle ground between NGOs and government. So it has both the two like members. And so when NGOs have issues, or government has an issue of NGOs, that's like the middle ground where they meet, which is totally different thing from what people want here in Uganda. How should NGOs be registered under URSB? I think the registration under URSB is okay, because right now we are registered as companies limited by guarantee. People who have been doing social enterprise, some of them continue doing business as company limited by guarantee. Some of them choose to create another vehicle, which is a company limited by shares, where this NGO owns shares in that. It's still totally okay for as long as you keep your papers right. I think that has no problem. Of course, someone talked about districts requiring us to register. And actually, that's a requirement in the law. I don't know if you are able to see that. These are NGO regulations of 2017. It says the district non-governmental organization monitoring committee shall keep an inventory of all organizations operating in the district. You can't keep an inventory without registering the NGOs, because it's this, in our assessment, that brings that dual registration, because under the regulations, districts are supposed to keep an inventory of every NGO. When you go to the district, they say, okay, register. There are other provisions which say you should keep a register book, you should submit the register to the NGO Bureau. I think it's this second one here. The District NGO Monitoring Committee shall submit to the Bureau an inventory of organizations and an up-to-date register of community-based organizations. You see it somewhere below there. So that's why they end up re-registering, like the multiple registration. You've registered at national, you get to be registered at the district, and like that. It comes from this provision. So that's something we are saying is wrong in the report. Someone said rationalization may lead to forceful merger of NGOs. Yes and no. Because I don't see government saying even your NGOs rationalize. Though I see it in an indirect way, like the apex border debate, where they are trying to say, you national networks, why don't you become one? Which is a bit like we force you to rationalize, which I've already discussed. There was someone, I don't remember, who talked about the briefcase NGOs, the NGOs doing illegal things, and so many things. True, just like among priests, there will be this priest who does criminal things. But we can't say, let's bungle all the priests in the one, because there's a bad one. So true, there are people out there who are going to work in districts pretending to be NGOs when they are not. There are even NGOs genuinely registered who are going to cheat members of the community. But yes, but that should not be a basis for punishing those who have not. So if my NGO if I'm not a crook, the fact that there is a crook out there is not a basis for me to suffer. You get? Because your role is to look for that crook and handle that crook, but let me live my life. So when a thief steals something in a village, they do not go house to house, like throwing out everything in the house so that they can find the thief or what has been stolen. So we acknowledge there are people who use NGO names, who do bad things in the name of NGOs. For example, you gave an example of those people had documents from NASA. They are crooks. So deal with them as crooks. But don't say because someone had forged documents from NASA, you who has genuine documents, we are also going after you. And that's why we need to draw the line. So banks. We didn't talk about banks because that's totally different law. And we really know, I personally have fought with banks. I think the last time, even in Arua, I brought that controversial issue up. One of the campaigns I might want to do is to campaign against banks, and banks that are unreasonably freezing NGO accounts. We need to blacklist them. We just move our accounts to banks that have sense. I'm so passionate about that, and I'm really, 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 I want us, if the bank is not thinking right, let us blacklist it. We identify, because banks are not our regulators. Banks are businesses just like any other. If the bank wants to take on the role of our regulator, let's blacklist that bank, talk to all other NGOs, let's close our bank accounts with them and move to banks that see sense. I see no reason why a bank should treat me like it's above me, especially if it's my money I've struggled with. That is something I've moved, and the few banks I've engaged which have frozen people's accounts, and I happen to be called, I've written to them and we've moved our bank accounts. Because we have no time really. If you're a business and you can't know your limits, let's move to those who know their limits. That's my campaign. Of course, someone talked about NGOs being consulted in the process of doing policy and law. Yes, the NGOs are being consulted. I talked to the one of the, I forget her title. You know, the titles have changed. He used to be secretary to the bureau, and now is forgotten the new title now. They are going to start consultations. I think they are yet to confirm. They might begin next week, beginning with they are supposed to begin with the Mbarara. Then it will be Mbarara, Kabale. Then we go to Bushenyi, Kasese, Fort Poto. If it's approved, I've not talked to them again, that will be next week. They are moving to review the NGO Act and the policy. They have invited people from the NGO sector. Our role now, and the reason we are having this today, our role, our thinking is that once we come with agreed recommendations, we distribute them, and I'm combining this with your point of white paper, so that the different NGOs, the different people from NGOs are able to bring up these issues. As you can see, I didn't share this because it's also a work in progress. What would be like the white paper? This is something developed by the NIVA and the CCG, and you see 20 key issues in the NGO policy and the Act for review. So I've said 20, there might be more and the title might change. But we are trying to keep them short, but also cover as much. Because, you know, our people, if for example, this is how many, this is a 5-page document. If I gave you a 20-page document, probably I would be wasting time. So we are trying to do a small, like, kind of thing. You see here we have the issue, the recommendation, the issue, the recommendation, you see? Some recommendations are just one sentence. And the reason is, now that is after this. After I've gotten all these recommendations, this we shall share with different actors. So when that consultation happens, our hope is that people who appear in those consultations, because we won't be there, can bring some of these issues up for discussion, and then these issues are captured. And that is partly why this whole research was done. So this other extra document, because this document wasn't part of the research, but the reason we are trying to do it is make this easily digestible document. And for your information, I think we've also talked to networks. I've talked to Gulu NGO Forum, Lira NGO Forum, West Nile, Wesisnet, Kabarole. We've talked to KIK. We've talked to them. So they are ready for this, because our issue was, let's talk to those networks. We've also talked to Karamoja. We might have like a session, an online session, where we go through this with the networks to be able to appreciate this. So that also applies with your issue of the white paper. So we wanted to send this out, then these issues can come through that. But also there is a plan that once the ministry has finished the regional consultations, they are consulting throughout the country. Once they finish, they'll have one national consultation in Kampala. Before that national consultation happens, we expect these 2 papers to have been finalized, and then CCG will present, if they get space, the outcomes to the national one. If they don't get the space, we still have to share with them as documents they can use to enrich their, yeah. So that's the other process. Okay, then yes. Let's start because I was talking for CCG.
No, just to add another process that finally when the proposals are before Parliament, we shall also interface with Parliament with the same position papers.
So in simple, this is like a beginning of something that's going to take us like 5 years into this. About the renaming of the board to bureau, well, I didn't want to go back into that. So originally there was an NGO bureau, which is an entity. That entity had a board. And below the board were others. So what they just did was say this entity no longer exists. And then went and said this board is now called a bureau. It's just that. That's what has happened. Then the experience in Kabale, I've seen this for far too many times. Sorry you had to go through that. But I like it, and I think we need these experiences, because me as someone who really spend a lot of my time telling NGOs compliance issues, and sometimes you find NGOs, you tell them this is wrong, he says, no, we've done that for the last 10 years, it is right. What I like is when you share an experience like yours, it makes those who thought maybe what I was saying was wrong realize that this thing is real. Not that I wish them to go through it. And that's the reason why we do all these NGO compliance things. We don't wish them to go through this. But there are people who, they've never seen it, so they won't believe it. So when someone who has gone through it tells them, then it makes sense to them. And sorry you went through that, but that's how it is. A question on who pays when you've submitted your application and the bureau has delayed. The moment you submit your application, please get a received slip. Because when you have it, it means from that day they received it, they are not going to charge onwards, even if they spent a year. So that is a very important thing. When you get it, it helps you, because the counting of time now stops in terms of fine from that point onwards. What does the secretary of the bureau do, or what are the responsibilities? Well, the secretary of the bureau heads the bureau. He's the one in charge of the day-to-day running of the bureau. Just like I said, they just replaced the word executive director with secretary. So in terms of functions, he does the same functions the executive director was doing. So anything that we used to go to the executive director goes to the secretary. If you are writing a letter, you used to write it addressed to executive director, now it's addressed to secretary. The secretary will respond in the same way. It's more like a title than a function. Yeah. Then I included, Henry, I included the regulations. When you read some of those things, let me say, everywhere you find I've talked about forms, it's about regulations, because the forms are from the regulations. Even quoting regulation, this regulation, the other says this. Are there solicitor generals at every district? No. They are a bit at regions in a funny way, because even the regional is not fully established. For example, I think Lira doesn't have a fully established regional something. They use Gulu, and sometimes Fort Portal doesn't have. They are supposed to use Mbarara, but it's easier to come to Kampala from Fort Portal than to go to Mbarara. In terms of the distance is the same. There's a difference of about 10 kilometers, but there are more taxis and buses coming to Kampala than to Mbarara. So it's easy to jump on the one coming to Kampala and you do your work, as opposed to going to Mbarara. So yes, there are those regional things they've created, but they've not considered some few bottlenecks here and there. Just like, it's easy for someone from some part of Rakai no, not Raka, I forget the very last district, to go to Mbarara than coming to Masaka. Because, well, there are those things. So they've tried to put them at region, and even at regional, sometimes you find the regional person there has no capacity to make a decision and is just a conduit. I'll give you an example of the person who sits in Kabale. They don't, like URSB, they don't have capacity to make most of the decisions. So all they do is they receive and send to Kampala. And then Kampala gets back, then you pick. The registration certificates, these are in the law, and the law tried to create a difference between certificate of incorporation and certificate of registration. So that's where the difference is, and to me, really, it shouldn't have been. Because the duplication here is you register with the NGO Bureau, get a registration certificate, and get a permit. And it becomes hard to tell what the certificate serves, because the permit is like a trade license. You get? So I have a trade license to trade. Then why do I need a certificate? I don't know if you... Because I already have a certificate of incorporation from somewhere else. Likewise, or let me give it the other way, for us, the lawyers, you have a PC, a practicing certificate. But if someone required you to have another certificate before the practicing certificate, and that's why for the lawyers, once the law firm has been approved by law council, you don't pay trading license. Because what you paid to the law council is already trading license. So in our situation, it's like you are paying a certificate, which I don't know how to describe, and then you are paying a trading license. All of them to do the same work. That's why it's a bit problematic. About the cost of the footprint, I thought about this, but I realized it's better done as a standalone research. A standalone research where like we go and see what has been the cost implication to NGOs to meet these obligations. Of course, I would love to approach it from two ways. The cost implication in terms of how much money has government made from us, because they always treat us like we don't contribute. For example, if you look at fines, all the NGOs have dealt with, which have ended up paying fine, none has paid below 5 million. So if you collected the fines that NGOs have paid, or let's put it the other way around, the NGO Bureau says there are 5,000 active NGOs in the country. If, assuming all of them are indigenous NGOs, paying 60,000 shillings for a permit per year. So that is 60,000 times 5,000. How much money is that? It's in billions, I think. That's about 30 billion. So that's the money we are paying per year. And I would love to approach it from that side. Like, we pay so much, this is paid in fines, and you leave alone like NSSF and 500 million, 300 million, okay. That's what we pay per year. Okay. Now, you leave alone the things like the argument I've had a lot of times where people say, NGOs employ staff who pay payee. Yes, they pay payee, but that payee is the individual tax. What about the direct tax that the NGO has to pay? Like, look at NGOs which bring in vehicles, for example. How much money they pay. All the other facilities. So I would be interested in looking at it that way. And then looking at, dedicate like a whole chapter on the negative. So the negative is there is this whole tossing around. I love to use an example of one of the NIVA members who is based in Kabong. He comes to submit documents at the NGO Bureau, and the NGO Bureau told them, you are missing a document. And they have to go back. The sub-county where they are, they move and sleep somewhere so that they can catch the morning bus. Which means he travels to that place, spends a night, travels to Kampala. You bounce him, he has no piece of paper. He has to spend a night, travel tomorrow, spend another night, catch another. That's a week. And all has happened just because he missed one letter. On the, you have a file like this, and it's missing one letter, or you are saying this cow didn't sign properly, and he has a week to do that, and he'll need another week to get back to you. Now that's the kind of negative cost we need to document, and probably to also inform the positive, how much we are paying, and the negative, how much we are being treated. I've already talked about the white paper, the securitizing of the sector. That is true, only that in this report we did not want to. You see, we are trying to write a report that we want to give to someone in government, and he pays attention to it. So we felt some aspects. We talk about it. We talk about how security people are in it, but in a subtle way, because we didn't want to. Because sometimes people block listening to you because he feels what you are saying is attacking them, and that is also answers the aspect of worst case scenario. What happens if the worst law came? We thought about it. I even have a whole write-up on what happens. But you can't share it. Not at this time. Because someone will say, oh, so this is what you are planning. let's have how to deal with you. Just like when NGOs were closed, there's a way we responded to like a number of them, which we can never come here and say, you see, when these people were closed, this is what we did. Because the next will happen. We had an experience from chapter 4. So when NGO Forum and the UNET were closed, we came in, supported them from the legal side, supported them from the administrative side. And one theory, school of thought is someone in government said, okay, so these people you closed, they're actually not closed because these people are supporting them. So let's close them as well. Then we see where you'll get the resources. So then we learned that if you are going to be supporting some of these things, it's better you support, but not in the, in the way that everyone knows, because they will come after you, because their attempt is to make everything fail. So if you are going to be the one, we've frozen these people's accounts, and you're the one who is now providing the money, then let's freeze your account as well and we see. Yeah. So that's why this is not there. I talked about a certain date, that is 24th September 2024. That date is when the new regulations came into force. The regulation, no, not the regulation, sorry. It's when the rationalization was gazetted. And it's when rationalization of the NGO Bureau started. In other words, anyone who held a position before that, if you were ED, you stopped being ED on 23rd, and on 24th you became something else. Which means if the certificate you are holding as an NGO, at the bottom of it, it is signed by the ED. So if your application was on that man's desk and he has not yet put his signature, you get? He couldn't put another signature. So from that date onwards, the lucky ones whom he signed, now that's why all those who applied from around August of last year have not yet gotten their document. Actually, from around June, have not yet gotten their documents. The reason being, he hadn't signed them. And then a law comes and says, you are no longer. So the administrative thing he has done is to say, they've done is to allow that any application that they received before 24th is not going to go through the bureau. You remember, like I told you, there is that bureau which is like a committee which will listen to. So anything before 24th won't go to that committee. But then they have to change the law, have new regulations, so that this person can still sign them. Now that law is waiting a minister. We tried to engage to see the process, but they somehow blocked us. So we are waiting a minister makes new regulations which amend the existing NGO regulations so that the NGO Bureau can now issue new certificates and permits under the rationalization thing. So that's why there is that date. Yeah, the other ones were really contributions which which do not need my response, like scrapping DNMCs, the problem with the MOUs. Yeah, the other ones were really like recommendations, either to put in the recommendations or to go back and see how they are being discussed in the two papers and improve them. Otherwise, I'd like to thank you for the contributions. Back to you, Judith.
I think Peter deserves better than that, really. And also yourselves, you deserve something good. Well, if you think that's the best you deserve, well, that's up to you. But thank you. I want to say thank you very, very much to each one of you for making time and for contributing to this very important exercise that we've had. Peter, thank you so much. You've done quite a tremendous job. You've also given us a very good opportunity to learn and to reflect on some of these issues. And I think if you haven't read all these policies that Peter has talked about at the start, I think now you have a very good assignment to go back to and start from. You cannot operate in a sector and you don't understand the rules that govern that sector. You will not have a proper engagement if you're going to have to actually shape policy to make your work easier and better. So I challenge all of us. If you know you have weaknesses, you haven't interfaced with these policy documents, please make them your best friends. We need to really, really understand these issues in depth. Thank you very much, CCG, Dr. Sarah Birete, Dr. Charles, GIZ, Farida, thank you very much for your input. We wouldn't be here without your support. Guys, let's also acknowledge that and give GIZ a warm applause. We really, really appreciate you. I am told that lunch is ready. I think we shall be having lunch in the same room, just over there where you had your breakfast earlier. Thank you very much. Is there? Just a minute. I'm just told that lunch is just ready. Yes. The Civic Space TV team. Thank you, you people. You've been live, by the way. You've been live on the Civic Space TV, which is our CCG platform. So you can, if you haven't, actually go to YouTube, subscribe, and watch yourselves, watch the things you were saying. And keep following the channel. There's so much content there, basically about governance and our efforts to expand the civic space. It's all